After Sunday's performance, there's a question. Is Derek Stingley an all-pro cornerback? And we take a further look into Devin Singletary and the unsung heroes from Sunday's win.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. Wake up and turn up on this Tuesday to another episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So glad to be back to talk football with you guys. I'm your host.
Good football like that.
Good football wins. You know how that feels.
Before we start, John, it's one of the moments where it is December 19th. Over the last 3 years, we came on this show talking about the draft, talking about how this coach ain't going to be here, this quarterback is terrible, and now here we are, 3 years later from the start of the Houston Texans rebuild, man, and there's meaningful football with a team that's 8-6.
It feels good outside in the city of Houston, and it feels good to be a Texans fan. I'm your one half of your host, John, some sports guy, Hickman, your Texans football analyst. And, of course, joining me as always is the man with the plan, Insider, Scoop. Oh, we got some to talk about today with the latest on C.J. Stroud. Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you to all of our first-time guests. Excuse me, I should have kicked it off with that. But if this is your first time, please do us a favor. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast. And, hey, listen, for all of our returning listeners lending your ear for another episode as we talk Texans, thank you for coming back. I think you guys are going to enjoy today's show. However, as you can see, the latest, or if you can't see if you're listening, whether in your car, the latest on C.J. Stroud, you guys definitely want to tune in for that, so stick around. We look into Devin Singletary, and we also look into some of the unsung heroes from Sunday's victory. Devin Singletary, if you guys remember back early in this year, my bold prediction, we'll get into that.
But before we start, a lot of your bold predictions are starting to come true, by the way.
It's all up there. It's all up top. But before we get to Devin Singletary and the unsung heroes from Sunday's victory, is Derek Stingley Jr. an all-pro cornerback? Before we get to that, I do want to circle back to Sunday's matchup where we can all agree that was the Texans defense best game of the season. Oh, my gosh, man. I went back and watched a little bit of it. Hadn't had a lot of time to dive into the tape because of the baby, but the Texans defense was crazy. Now, I got some numbers here according to PFF. Only 5 missed tackles. That's the lowest, which will make it the best of the season. That's great because we know this team has had issues missing tackles throughout the year. Only 53 yak yards, also the lowest, which will make it the best of the season. The Texans registered the most defensive stops, and, this is according to PFF, by the way. This is one of the stats from PFF that I really do like because I understand some of them aren't necessarily, the best. But defensive stops, tackles that constitute a failure for the offense, 36 Sunday. That is the most on the year. And Christian Harris had a monster day shutting down the flats. Only allowed 17 yards against the Tennessee Titans, bouncing back from allowing 91 yards and a TD versus the New York Jets, where the Houston Texans suffered that 30-6 loss. Now, as we pivot to Derek Stingley Jr., guys, this year he's only allowed, and again, take these stats with a grain of salt. This is coming from PFF. Sometimes they may accredit a yard or yards or TDs to a player, and if you go back and watch the tape, it wasn't their player's assignment. But if you look at some of these numbers, man, Derek Stingley's having a phenomenal year. Only allowed 18 catches this year. Has only allowed 18 catches this year. Only targeted 30 times. So that's big. Has only allowed 318 yards this year. which is better from last year. Receptions numbers, that's better from last year. Target numbers, that's better from last year. Yak numbers, 59 compared to 111 from last year. They do accredit him to 2 TDs. I only counted 1 when I go back and look at some of the tape throughout the year. 4 interceptions this year. That's better from last year. The highest he's allowed in the game this year in terms of yards, 106, and that was against the Arizona Cardinals. But guys, in games this year, only 20 yards, Baltimore Ravens. 35 yards, Cincinnati. 39 yards, Jacksonville. 34 yards, New York. 41 yards, Tennessee. In the game against the Denver Broncos, where, the 2 interceptions, the play, the ball hawk ability, 0 yards allowed to go along with his 2 interceptions and a pass breakup. I think that was his official coming out game, being the number 3 overall pick. So as we look at how stellar this defense performed on Sunday, some of the unsung heroes we'll get to in the second segment. Cody, the conversation right now, he's only played 8 games. He can finish the season out with 3 more games. That'll put him at 11. Now, I don't know if there's a minimum or a maximum, but there hasn't been a lot of cornerbacks in the NFL that has played better than Derek Stingley when he's on the field. Is Derek Stingley, can he be a Pro Bowl cornerback at the end of the year with 11 games?
If he stays healthy, yes. And I know some people, especially the ones that's been rocking with the show even before the 2022 NFL draft, when a lot of us was debating Sauce Gardner, Stingley, Sauce. I was always a part of the Stingley train because I always believed that he had the potential to live up to the guy that he was in 2019. Here's the catch to that. I know 2019 been a long time. However, John, the one thing that kept hampering Derek Stingley has been the injuries. We seen it last year. We saw it his last 2 years at LSU. And even though he did miss what was it, about a good 5 to 6 games so far this season, he has shown when healthy, and this is the biggest part, in the right defensive scheme. A lot of people wanted to write Derek Stingley Jr. off last year, not only due to the fact that he missed a handful of games, but because he did not look like the guy that was worth being a number 3 overall pick. And I can 100% say I could attest to that as well, especially given how good Sauce Gardner did look in New York. However, what I kept saying, he did not look good in Lovie Smith's defensive scheme. Now you put him in a situation with a coach in DeMeco Ryans who has constructed a defense that is suitable to let him go out there and perform to his best attributes. Before moving forward, this is what Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about the growth of Derek Stingley Jr.
Corner is a position where you have to have that confidence first and foremost, and you have to be even keeled because things don't always go your way out there. You're on the island where everybody sees what happens, right? When you're on the island at that corner and you're going up against some of the best athletes in the NFL. So when a play doesn't go your way, how are you going to respond? Sometimes guys are going to make plays, but you have to be even keel enough to know you can come back the next play and be prepared for the route and go up and take the ball away. So you have to remain calm when you're playing corner, and Sting has done that. Right, he has a good presence about him. He's calm. Right, he has a really good play demeanor about himself, and that's what allows him to make those plays.
I think we can all agree that the game against the Denver Broncos was Stingley's breakout game, but I think this game against the Tennessee Titans might have been his statement game, only because you have to look at how good and how well DeAndre Hopkins has been playing throughout this whole entire season, but especially within the last 2 games before taking on the Houston Texans. This is a man over the last 2 games coming into that game, 200 yards, 12 catches with 2 touchdowns. We understand how dominant D-Hop can be when he has everything going for himself, and that's exactly what he was showcasing in those last 2 games. However, as Derek Stingley Jr. being the primary defender, locking up DeAndre Hopkins, Hopkins only had 21 yards on 2 catches. And I understand he did connect with Will Levis on not 1, but 2 big plays that could have resulted in, let's say, a score for the Tennessee Titans. However, due to Derek Stingley Jr., I believe there was a play where D-Hop was able to get open, and Stingley used that, what I like to call it, that mythological speed. What is it, like a 4.3 or something like that? Stingley was able to
I don't know,
use
man. They
his
told
speed.
me, I heard from down in the bayou it was a 4-1. I don't know. That's what I heard.
That's why I like to say mythical speed. But he was able to use his speed to create ground and to be able to get one of the most important pass breakups of that game. Look, if Derek Stingley Jr. can play the last 3 games of the season and the Houston Texans go out there and make the playoffs, by the way, another bold prediction, not only do they have a chance to make the playoffs, but still win this division, without a shadow of a doubt, you have to give Derek Stingley Jr. an all-pro selection this year.
It's an interesting stat again. So as we look at how great Derek Stingley has been for the Houston Texans when he's been on the field, we understand that he's missed some time. And that time miss has hurt Houston. When he's been on the field, here's something that you guys would love to hear. And Cody, this backs up your point. Looking at last year, a lot of that zone scheme ran by the Tampa 2 defense from Lovie Smith. This year, in man, and we love man, only 4 targets, only 1 reception. This is for Derek Stingley. 4 targets. So he ain't getting targeted. And I think when you look at Derek Stingley and how of a game changer he can be, there's 2 things that you got to take away from Derek Stingley. And I look at the great, one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, Champ Bailey. You're not testing him a lot. Only 4 targets a man. Because with zone, you could find a receiver, trailing by, and he may be able to make a catch because of the great pass or whatever. So zone is a little bit easier to say, okay, I got a catch on you. But in man, 4 catches, 4 targets, 1 catch, 31 yards, 3 forced incompletions, 1 PBU, 1 interception, no touchdowns. An NFL passer rating of 19.8. You can't name me 5 cornerbacks playing better than Derek Stingley when he's on the field right now. Hey, listen, guys. We got some concerts coming up. I'm sorry if you bought tickets to the Anita Baker concert.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. However, December 30th, if you want to laugh, Cedric the Entertainer is coming to town. And that'll be a good show. I'm sure he won't kick nobody out. The thing about it is you shouldn't have to worry about getting kicked out, but you also should not have to worry about how you're going to buy tickets to the next big event. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Unless you got a date coming up, want to take a girl out, want to take a guy out. Game Time has killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Christmas shopping, and you're kind of like, I don't feel like getting out. There's too much craziness in the world, but I still want to buy a gift. Game Time. Again, easy way to find and buy tickets for every event. You want to buy somebody a Rockies tickets? You can do that on Game Time. You want to see them at a theater event near you? You can do it on Game Time. They also have the zone deals where you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. I opened up the show talking about how great it is to talk about meaningful football midway through December. The Houston Texans 8-6. And the one thing that I started thinking about, John, is what are you and I going to talk about in the offseason? Because over the last 2-3 years, it's been coaching search, quarterback this, diving deep into the draft. We will still dive deep into the draft. And I'm excited for this one because it's not going to be so focused on the quarterback position. However, one of the topics I do want us to look at is your bold predictions, because you have been right about several things, and one of them has been the emergence of Devin Singletary, a guy in Sunday's game. He wasn't just an unsung hero. He was the hero in terms of rushing for 121 yards on the ground with 26 carries. And that game showcased something you have been talking about when highlighting Devin Singletary. And it wasn't just you. Dalton Schultz also had an opportunity to talk about the same exact thing.
It's like, dude, it's so subtle. Like he's got such good vision just in the zone schemes, and he's got sneaky balance. It always takes a little bit more than you think, will take to bring him down. Dude, the scramble, I was on a route on the opposite side of the field and I saw him, I'm kind of running across the field and I saw Case break the pocket and I saw Motor turn up, and as soon as he turned up, if there's a clip of it somewhere, I'm literally screaming, run, Motor, run. Yeah, man, to have a guy step up in those big time moments and being able to make those plays, dude, I'm pissed about the power they called back, just because he could have had another big one very next play. And so yeah, Motor's done a great job all year, and yeah, he's got incredible vision.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I want to say that I think the best takeaway from what Dalton Schultz said, who returned to action this Sunday for Houston, came up with a clutch catch to help, score a touchdown on the TD drive, to set up the touchdown on the TD drive. Mm-hmm. He's the guy out there blocking. He's on the field. He's in the film room. He's at the practice, and I love that he highlighted he has great vision. Mm-hmm. Along with he has some good footwork. And I think before I pass it off to you, and then we'll get into unsung heroes, I think that's just the biggest difference with Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce right now. Not necessarily saying that, because if you look at Sunday's matchup, Dare Ogunbowale got more carries and opportunities in the backfield than Dameon Pierce. So now I wonder, where does DP stand with this coaching staff in terms of how they view him as a productive player, right? Not anything standing because of outfield issues or just, anything. Just they're trying to make a playoff push. They're looking to put the best players out there, the most productive players out there. And I find it funny that Dare got more carries. But back to Devin Singletary, it's the vision that has allowed him to have these 150-yard games and 100 games here. And, since week 10, he's a top 5 running back in the NFL. That's a crazy stat that I didn't know until Sunday's matchup. So it's things like that. But it's also paired with his footwork. Mm-hmm. There's been times where he got skinny in the hole, and his vision was able to see the cutback, but he had to get skinny. And his footwork, he wasn't tiptoeing around. He was able to shift quickly and cut back the other way. So his feet work and that vision, and I'm glad Dalton Schultz pointed it out. This is something that I've been pointing out for a long time now. So I'm glad to see a Texans player is doing it. But
Case Keenum did it as well.
So they're seeing the things because they're around it every day. He's just the better running back for this team.
Really quick before moving on,
He's close to 1,000 yards, by the way. He's 189 yards away.
That is crazy.
He's 97 yards for the next 3 games to get 1,000 yards, which will be the first 1,000-yard running back, I think, since Carlos Hyde.
My
with
guy.
the Houston Texans back in 2019.
I got it. They should have never let walk away, but that's neither here or there. But shout out to Oh my gosh.
David Johnson.
Well, never. Once again, that's how far we have come. But moving forward, Devin Singletary, man, he has been a unsung hero for this entire season for the Houston Texans. Because I just can't think where the Texans would be without his services. Speaking of unsung heroes, there are a couple guys that I do want to point out and shout out really quick when you look back at Sunday's game before we move forward to the Cleveland Brown. First and foremost, one guy it was definitely an unsung hero's tight end, Dalton Schultz. If it wasn't for him making that spectacular, that great, he had put it interception the way he was putting, the way he was able to come down with that reception thrown by Case Keenum, because if he do not come away with stealing that interception, you're looking at a situation where we'll be sitting here talking about how the Texans missed an opportunity in Sunday's game. However, that was a big play. Another guy that I want to highlight on that defensive front, and he's basically been another unsung hero, not just for several games throughout this season, but for this entire year, Khalil Davis. In only 17 snaps, this young man, 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack against the Tennessee Titans. Here's what Malik Collins had to say about his teammate.
He hungry. He was a guy that's, he's been in and out the league. He was in the USFL, and now he getting the opportunity, to play in a rush. The first play he got in the game, he forced the TFL. He's just been disruptive. He's explosive. I'm excited to continue to see his growth.
I saw how well Khalil Davis played against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. However, it didn't really have a strong impact until I saw Malik Collins talk. Because, John, you've been in several press conferences with Malik. 1 or 2 words, that's it. But for him to really dive into the importance of Davis, not just for this game, but to showcase how hungry he has been for this entire season, says a lot about that guy. I'm just hoping during the offseason, Coach D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio get together and find a way to keep Khalil Davis on the scene. Because whether a starter like against the Jacksonville Jaguars or situational purposes like in the game against Tennessee, he has shown the ability to be a very important piece to this Houston Texans defensive front.
Side note, looking at that interview that you just played, this is my first time really just seeing Malik Collins' face in a long time. Big guys don't get a lot of opportunity to get FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
And he has that beard. And I was like, man, he looks like somebody. So I went to go look him up. And he was a wrestler in high school. I was like, Mark
Henry? I knew you was about to say Mark Henry.
With the beard, man. Shout out to Malik Collins, who also had a great day Sunday for Houston. I think that was probably his best game of the year, man. There's a play floating around on social media where he just absolutely destroyed the double team, got right in between those guys and made the play. So Malik Collins is having a good, I think, second half of the year for Houston. But I'm glad you mentioned Khalil Davis. I do want to just briefly pivot to, and we'll probably talk about him more on tomorrow's show, Tyir Tart, claimed off waivers for the Houston Texans, former Tennessee Titans. He was having a good year. He was ranked, I think, like a top 10 nose tackle at the top of the year, D tackle or something like that. What I like about that signing, because you mentioned Khalil Davis, and I hate to say this, because it does pushes Kurt Hennish out the way. Now, there is no Hassan Ridgeway, so I can see them just maybe keeping them. I'm not sure, but now you look at the situation for the Houston Texans D tackles, where I think finally at the end of the year, so if they make the playoffs, I mean, it comes at the right time. But your starters are Sheldon Rankins, Malik Collins. Sheldon Rankins has had a game this year with 3 sacks, right? So we know how dominant he can be up front. Malik Collins has had multiple 1-sack games this year. Now you're looking at Khalil Davis, who has had a couple of sacks on the year. You pair that with Tyir Tart, you're finally looking at a solidified defensive tackle unit. John Gennard, Will Anderson, and then now you have Derek Barnett. Right? So I think and I say that because in San Francisco, that defensive line unit was versatile and it was deep.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what the Houston Texans had this year for the most part. So credit Nick Caserio for Derek Barnett had a sack Sunday. Khalil Davis has had some sacks this year for Houston up front interior. Now getting Tart off waivers, right? Give him some credit for trying to piece together what D'Amico Ryan's needs, has made his defense successful. And I think a lot of that is due to depth. Unsung hero, I definitely agree. I'm looking at Khalil Davis, so I agree with you there. But I also think Malik Collins. Malik Collins was an unsung hero for this Texas defense. I think he had a sack and a half, a couple of tackles for loss. When you look at the D line going up against a banged up offensive line in back-to-back weeks against the Jets, they did not dominate like they should have. They took the call. They saw the pressure. They understood what's at stake. The playoffs are at stake. And you're looking at a guy like Malik Collins who, since he's arrived to Houston, no playoffs. I think he hadn't went to the playoffs dating back to his time with the Cowboys. And remember, he spent some time with the Raiders. So he ready to go eat in the playoffs. So he just had a dominant day, holding Derrick Henry, to 9 yards. You got to give credit to the guys up front. I think the pressure that they caused made Steven Nelson's job easier, made Derek Stingley's job easier, made Jalen Petrue's job easier, allowed the linebackers and Denzel Perriman and Christian Harris to flow in and out of gaps and not have to worry about getting beat up because you got an offensive line free release to the second level because there was no pressure created from the D-line. That was important to see. So shout out to Malik Collins and Khalil Davis, Derek Barnett. Those guys really helped Houston up front kind of control and dictate the flow of the game defensively. Hey, listen, Nick Caserio, if you are looking for an intern, somebody that can pick your brain every now and then, I got my resume on LinkedIn, so I know you're not a small business, but I could be considered a top-tier candidate. But when you're looking to hire for your small business, you definitely want to have as many top-tier candidates to interview as possible. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you with the tools to find the right professional for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers and Texans fans across the world, thank you for sticking around. Cody, the latest on CJ Stroud. A lot of you guys may not like it, but I'm going to let my man who, of course, the insider, the man behind, in the building, credential media member, Cody Davis. What is the latest on CJ Stroud?
Coach D'Amico Ryans announced that Stroud is still in concussion protocol, and I was told that he is still dealing with some symptoms. So that is not good news. And then Aaron Wilson over at KPRC, a good friend of the show that we haven't had here in a very long time. Aaron Wilson reported last night that not only is CJ Stroud still dealing with some symptoms, but there is a possibility that Case Keenum could start for the second consecutive game. So I know some of you guys might hear that and think to yourself, dang, another game without CJ, especially going up against arguably, if not the best defensive team in the league in the Cleveland Browns. I know it's going to be tough. However, at the end of the day, like Coach D'Amico Ryans did say on Friday, and I totally respect him for this, at the end of the day, they are not worried about a game. They are not worried about the playoffs. When it comes to CJ and his concussion, that is pretty big because you don't really see too many players missing 2 or more games with a concussion. Once again, I was told by a source that he's still dealing with some symptoms. So that lets you know that it was a pretty serious concussion.
Yeah.
But as Coach D'Amico Ryan said, when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's all about the health of the players. And I'm thankful for that because I definitely do not want to see this organization and CJ go through what we saw in Miami just over a year ago.
Oh my goodness, man. Yeah, it's not worth it, honestly. But I will say if he clears, we probably would see it maybe Thursday.
Yeah, because tomorrow is the first day of practice. Put it like this: if he's not back tomorrow, I'm going to rule him out for the rest of the week because the way the protocol is, I think that last step they have to go through, I think 2 contact practices, I want to say, and Friday is mostly a walkthrough to say the least.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, it's like if he's not out there Wednesday, I mean, the chances of him suiting up Sunday is slim to none. However,
Yeah.
put it like this, ladies and gentlemen, I would be more receptive of Case Keenum starting over Davis Mills if that is the case.
Yeah,
If that
I'll
is the
say
case,
this.
point intended.
I'll say this with the CJ Stroud concussion situation, man. If he's having trouble still being able to see or focus, you hold him out. You hold him out. Thank you guys for listening to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. A part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube under Locked On Texans. If you made it to this point, hey, give me some background help. I want to switch my whole setup. So help me out with that. Give me some ideas. Follow me on Twitter, X, whatever, at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.